So, chapter 20 is all about war, it's all about conflict, it's all about struggle. We have both of the world wars going on in this chapter. We also have the Great Depression, we have the Cold War. So, in chapter 20, we have a lot of really, really important turning points. And the first one here is really going to be that first Great War, that World War One, that from 1914 to 1918 is going to launch a completely and totally new phase in world history. You're going to see that the long 19th century, that technically, according to historians, began with the French Revolution in 1789, is going to effectively end here in 1914. You're going to see that world history is going to take a completely and totally different vibe. In fact, a lot of individuals, a lot of historians are going to see this conflict as a European civil war with a global reach. You're going to see that the conflict starts in Europe and just spills everywhere, especially to the colonies that the Europeans have, and it's going to drag everybody and anybody into this conflict. In fact, the United States is going to eventually be pulled in no matter how much they end up resisting. The other issue is that this is also going to be the end of the European heyday, because between 1914 and the end of World War II, Western Europe, as we know it up to this point, is going to largely self-destruct. It's no longer going to be the dominant civilization. However, in the aftermath of the war, the recovery of Europe between 1950 and 2000 is going to be remarkable. But this recovery, it's important to note, is going to be done without its overseas empires. And we'll kind of touch on that a little bit this chapter, but that's more coming with chapter 22. You'll see that empire is just simply too expensive to maintain, especially in the aftermath of the destruction and devastation of both World War One and World War Two. The expense of those wars, and then coupled with the recovery, is just going to simply make empire too expensive to maintain. And the recovery here in of Europe is also going to occur without its position as the core of Western civilization. When you get an opportunity here, you want to put a note down here next to B underneath number 3. You want to put down here, please, that the US will largely take over this role. The US will largely take over this role. So the First World War, in a lot of ways, is almost like it's an accident waiting to happen. There's a bunch of different things that have kind of started to pile on in the last quarter of the 19th century that continues into the beginning of the 20th century, that it's just, one thing after another that creates this amazingly tense situation that allows something as relatively minor as essentially a murder to kind of cause Europe to cascade into this type of global conflict. I mean, what we have at base here is that the modernization of and Europe's rise to global ascendancy had sharpened the traditional rivalries between European states. I mean, one of the consistent things that we've talked about since we began the textbook is this one characteristic that the European states are highly competitive with one another. And if you think about it, the last couple chapters, we've done nothing but to heighten that competition, whether it's economically because of the Industrial Revolution, or whether it's imperially with the growth and building of empire. There's also going to be different types of competition, like military competition and the building up of the armies and the navies. Social Darwinism is also going to play a big role in this. So there's a bunch of different elements that are just heightening this already hyper competitive situation. Also contributing to this is around 1900, the balance of power in Europe was shaped by two rival alliances. On one side, you have the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria, and Italy. On the other side, you have the triple entente of Russia, France, and Britain. And what these alliances mean is they're going to be able to turn a minor incident into this great, huge, colossal conflict. What it also does, and this is a little note here I need you to put down, again, somewhere over here, um, in the area like A, B, and C underneath 3, because it kind of goes, the note kind of goes with this whole section. And it's a medium to largest size note. But you want to put, please, here that these alliance systems made it impossible to have a one-on-one conflict, because any conflict involving one member of the alliance would draw in the other members as well. So, what we basically have at this point is two sides that are armed to the teeth, that don't like each other, that have really romanticized over the last 75 to 100 years war. So, they're just looking for any excuse to kind of show that they are the superior group of people. And ultimately, on June 28th, 1914, a Serbian nationalist is going to assassinate Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who is heir to the Austrian throne, who is a person that honestly no one really likes. But this assassination, because of the situation that we've created in Europe, is going to be that little spark that sets off the entire conflict. Eventually, here, general war is going to break out in August of 1914. And there's a couple factors that are going to contribute to the outbreak and the character of the war. Now, with each of these characteristics, by the way, there's going to be a note. So I would suggest that you go one side, the other side, or write real small. Those are kind of your options. But the first factor here is going to be popular nationalism. And the note that I want you to put down here next to A under 5, again, it can be at either side of A, it doesn't really matter. But you want to put down, please, that this is an outgrowth of social Darwinism, which created intense competition and left little room for compromise. What this kind of does is it favors action. It favors competition. It favors a show of force, or any type of trying to finagle the situation or try to downplay the situation, try to get out of some type of conflict, is looked at as weak. So this is really just, continuing to amp up the situation that we have. Another factor here is going to be industrialized militarism. And again, you want to put down here next to B, again, either side, doesn't particularly matter. Do it the opposite side of where you just put the note for A. You want to put here next to B that there was a major arms race starting in 1910. And this is the first large-scale war fought after the Industrial Revolution. So the importance of this is that two things. One, there's a competition to have the biggest and best armed army. So as soon as one country has some incredibly impressive piece of military technology, another country has to have something bigger and better. And then the next country has to have something bigger and better. This just simply becomes another element of competition. The other thing is that because we are now industrialized, it means that we have a near limitless capacity to produce what we need in order to wage war. We are going to be mass producing weapons and bullets and all the things that we need for war in the same way that we are mass producing other consumable products, like whether it's clothes or shoes or even cars. Those same techniques now are going to be used for warfare. The last big characteristic is Europe's colonial empires. And you want to put down here next to C that this empire meant that any conflict involving the mother country would involve their colonies as well. This is one of the things that really gives the truly global idea of this world war. The fact that it's not just simply a conflict that is centered within Europe, it is going to go to every place that you have these countries, colonies touching. So we're seeing it in Africa. We're seeing it in Southeast Asia. We are seeing it absolutely and in the Middle East, every single place that these countries, these different teams have colonies that are neighboring the other side's colonies. And again, this kind of gives it the whole, global vibe to it. So a lot of the beliefs about World War One are really, or how World War One is going to play out, is really drawing on what the last century of conflict has been. And because we haven't really had any great big huge wars since the end of Napoleon, we're kind of basing it on the little bit of conflicts that we've had. Since we haven't had anything real drawn out, most people are going to expect that World War One is going to be a quick war. I mean, in the past 100 to 75 years since Napoleon, we've actually had wars that lasted 4 or 7 weeks. So it's going to be very common. And this is a little note here I want you to put down next to one underneath capital B. You want to put down, please, that the common call was that it would be done by Christmas. I mean, the European mind, based upon what recent history has given them, they can't fathom that this conflict is going to go on for a long period of time, let alone go on for 4 years and be as bloody as it really is. Eventually, what happens is the war is going to become a war of attrition. This is largely due to trench warfare. You want to put down here next to number two. Do you want to put, please, that the nature of trench warfare made it slow? The other unique feature with it, and you're going to have a note next to number three as well, so you might want to go the other side of the note you just put down for number two, is that this becomes a total war where each country's whole population is going to be mobilized. But there's a little bit of a however. I mean, this is the most total war that we have up to this point. You will see that World War II is going to be an even more total war. But the note I want you to put down here next to number three is, however, many didn't feel the effects of the war until the very end. This will not be the case in World War II. You're going to see almost immediately in World War II that the conflict is being taken to the civilian population. We don't have that as much going on here in World War One, but in comparison to what the other wars look like of the last, 100 to 75 years, this is as much of a total war as we're going to get up to this point. You do see a lot more people being involved in the war effort. Women, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, going into munitions factories and taking a lot of male jobs while the men are off at the battlefield. In the aftermath of this, the war is going to leave widespread disillusionment amongst the intellectuals in its wake. You want to put down here next to four, because this is going to be something that we'll kind of deal with a little bit later. Do you want to put, please, here that this generation is known as the lost generation, and put lost generation in quotes, for several reasons. One, and you'll kind of see this a little bit later, but we have an unbelievable loss of human life. We're looking at 6 to 9 million people dying as a direct consequence of the military conflict in World War One. And then there's, a very large number of civilians that are going to lose their lives kind of as side casualties. But so you are losing in a lot of cases, literally an entire generation of young men are going to be killed or irreparably damaged because of this conflict. There's also a sense of a loss of innocence, sense of a loss of purpose, sense of a loss of a potential life, even for those survivors. So, this concept of loss is really going to play forward and will definitely explain some of the hesitations that we're going to get to once we get to World War II. War is also going to bring about a lot of social change. We have enormous casualties promoting social mobility. One of the things that this war will do is it will kill just as many nobles and high ranking members of society as they do low ranking members. I mean, bullets don't know social class. So you're going to see that once the war is over, there's going to be a lot more social fluidity and the ability to move up a social class or social classes in the aftermath of the war. Women are also going to increasingly win the right to vote. You're going to see really quickly after World War One that places like England, also the United States, are going to get the women are going to get the right to vote, and you're going to see it kind of slowly come in some other places afterwards here as well. There's also some new consumerism that is emerging. People are going to be buying things that they want, not necessarily things that they need. Another element of this is that radio and movies are going to start to become vehicles of popular culture. They're going to move beyond just simply news and limited information. They're going to be a source of entertainment and a source of distraction in a lot of ways. There's also going to be some big picture political fallout because of this conflict. I mean, one of the easiest ones that you should notice right away is a rearrangement of the map of Central Europe. You want to put here down next to number 6, please, that no one asked about this. These were decisions made at the peace table. So no one is asking for the creation, the recreation of Poland. No one is asking for the creation of Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, but they're going to be carved out of what previously had been the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So people in some cases, or some of the German states, people are going to go to bed in essence as one nationality and wake up the following morning after these decisions are enacted as a member of a completely new, never existed before nation, like with Czechoslovakia and also Yugoslavia. Also, the treaty that ends the war is ultimately going to create the conditions that cause World War II. And just kind of like some general info that you want to put down here next to number 7. So you want to put this that this was universally disliked, and it represented unwanted compromises. Again, a lot of this will kind of go on to help explain why, in the build up to World War II, you have the European allies kind of allowing Hitler to, in a lot of cases, do what he wants because no one is really happy with the Versailles Treaty. And they see some of the initial things that Hitler is doing as fixing some of the known problems. These guys are going to go directly after Germany for Two reasons. One, they are the only one of the Central Powers still standing. The Ottoman Empire doesn't exist anymore. The Austro-Hungarian Empire doesn't exist anymore, but Germany is still standing. On top of that, the Germans are the wealthiest member of the major powers of the Central Powers. And we got a lot of rebuilding to do. And we need money in order to do that rebuilding. So Germany is going to be the one that ultimately is going to front the bill for this. But there's certain elements here of the Treaty of Versailles that's really going to be problematic for the Germans moving forward. One, Germany is going to lose its colonial empire and 15% of its imperial territory. They're required to pay heavy reparations. Reparations, remember, are payment for losses in war. So it's not going to be enough that Germany loses, but they're going to be assessed the blame for the outbreak of the war. And we'll get to this here in a second. And because they're solely responsible for this disaster, they got to pay to put Europe back together again. Germany is also going to suffer restrictions of its military forces. They're only allowed to have a standing army of 100,000. Well, 100 years ago, having an army of 100,000 didn't cut it. So, again, this is going to be one of the things that the Nazis and Hitler is going to work to resolve. And people are going to realize, okay, we don't necessarily have a great big huge problem with that, at least in the beginning. The biggest bitter pill that Germany has to swallow is that they had to accept sole responsibility for the outbreak of the war. And like I said earlier, the Germans are going to resent the treaty immensely. But here's the thing, and we also will have a little note that's going to go here in a second, but just give me a moment. One of the reasons why the Germans have to accept this is in a lot of ways, at this point in the war, they're kind of on their last legs. They can see that the light at the end of the tunnel is not going to be good news for them. And the Allies basically say, okay, look, Germany, you either sign this and you accept blame for the war, or we're going to continue to go and kick your butt. And the German powers that be understand that that's not going to be a good life choice, that that's not going to be something they're going to be able to sustain. And if they tell the Allies to go punt, and the Allies continue to thump them, the terms and conditions of the peace treaty are going to change a lot and definitely not the favor of the Germans. So, for a lot of Germans, this is sort of kind of like the best bet. But in a bigger picture, and you want to put this here down next to A through E, because again, this is going to be important later on, and actually put a star by this note. Do you want to put, please, here that this all helps to fuel the Nazis when the time comes? Other big pieces of, political fallout because of World War One. Like I told you earlier, like we dealt with last chapter, the Ottoman Empire is going to go bye-byes. We also had in Asia and Africa, we're going to start to set the stage from decolonization, where many are going to gain military skills and, most importantly, political awareness. The British, in some cases, are also going to start to start the process of creating self-government in places like India in return for war help. And in a lot of cases, and this is the little note I need you to add here next to A underneath number 9, do you want to put, please, here that there is a big push for independence? Japan is also going to be strengthened by the war. And another point I want to make, and a little note I want you to put here next to B, and this isn't a very big note. Do you want to put, please, here that Japan was not satisfied with what they received after the war? The Japanese really thought that they were entitled to more of the spoils of war, especially some of the Pacific colonies that the Germans had. And when those colonies are given in particular to the British, they just really kind of see this as another example of Western racism. And it's going to be one of the other things that is going to kind of, help fuel this anti-Western sentiment that will build and build and build within Japan. We also have here the United States are going to start to appear as a global power. However, you want to put down here next to number 10, you want to put, please, here, though they will shrink into isolation after World War One. The European powers sort of kind of hoped that the United States would stick around and kind of be part of a larger global community. But the United States just simply goes back across the Atlantic and it's like, look, we really don't want to have to deal with any of this nonsense. And they kind of push this notion of isolation until even after World War II starts to bubble over. Although many Europeans are indeed fascinated by Wilson's ideas. And the big ones here, and I want you to put this down here next to C, underneath number 10. Do you want to put down that these are the 14 points, the League of Nations, and next to the League of Nations, I want you to put in parentheses a very weak institution. All of these largely fail because the US Senate refused to join. I mean, you're going to see Europe sort of kind of tries to run with these ideas, but without the backing of the United States, these things simply aren't going to have a lot of teeth.